So, welcome everybody once again. Thank you for being here. I should say that my normal style when I deliver a presentation is to kind of do it off the cuff, to improvise. On this occasion, I've written quite a detailed script for the sake of the translation a bit, and also to arrange my thoughts. So if it looks like I'm reading off the script, at times I'm going to be reading off the script. I'd rather have an auto cue, but that doesn't really work in this context. So please forgive me if it's a bit, kind of not fully flowing as it were. But here goes. So yes, deep adaptation. So the themes we've been exploring on this conference are not easy. So looking at the climate and ecological emergency takes us into uncomfortable existential territory, to put it mildly. It's painful to contemplate the future of a world which is already in the grip of climate breakdown. So what will that look like for the generations that come after us? How will it be for the other species with which we share this beautiful but fragile planet? And what we're going to explore in the next hour is also challenging. Because I'm going to ask us to confront the very real possibility of the failure of our efforts to prevent the worst of climate and ecological breakdown. And this was the starting point of the Deep Adaptation movement. That the collapse of global civilization, as we know it, is inevitable, catastrophe is probable, and human extinction is possible. These aren't my words. I'm quoting a 2018 article by Professor Jem Bendell entitled Deep Adaptation, a Map for Navigating Climate Tragedy. So Jem Bendell is a sustainability expert at the University of Cumbria in the UK. I should add that he has, since 2018, he has softened his original remarks a bit, now saying as opinion rather than fact that societal collapse is likely, inevitable, or already unfolding. It's also true to say that there is no current consensus in the scientific community on this issue. However, influential figures do support his thesis. And the 2019 UN Global Disaster Risk Assessment apparently came close to the same conclusion. The point is, we don't know. But given the failure of COP27, even to call for the kinds of emissions cuts the world needs, and the unprecedented and accelerating climatic shifts the world is witnessing, this is surely a possible outcome that we cannot afford to dismiss. So how do we respond to the possibility of societal breakdown in the face of catastrophic changes to the global environment? The title of this conference suggests a couple of reasonable responses. It talks of grief and fear, both of which are entirely understandable. But it also talks about faith. So faith doesn't mean belief in some higher power that will come to intervene to rescue us. Nor does it mean a kind of vague, optimistic belief in the human spirit and human ingenuity to get us through somehow. Faith in Buddhist terms is confidence in the Dharma, trust in the power of awakening, and in the efficacy of skillful action. It's belief in the law of karma. It's about taking responsibility for our mind and seeing very deeply that actions have consequences. And crucially, it goes hand in hand with love, with metta and the other Brahma Viharas. In Know Your Mind, Sangharakshita says that faith is inherent in any positive mental state. I'm not going to go into the deep adaptation agenda in any depth. But as the name implies, we are way beyond the territory of making minor changes to our current lifestyle. Like more recycling, less flying, and so forth. Deep adaptation is asking us, or saying that we will have no choice but to make fundamental changes to our way of life. But what I am going to do is ask us to consider 3 questions that Jem Bendell asks us. These questions open up the possibility of a response to our predicament that is based on metta. A response that comes from our spiritual practice as a Buddhist community. A response that can set a positive example. So, to quote Saraha from yesterday, we may end up helping to give palliative care at the end of the life of our species. In that case, our role as a spiritual community might be to help manage that end with awareness, kindness, wisdom, and dignity. But we might also be called upon to use the same skills to act as midwives at the birth of a new social order. A social order in which the Dharma can remain available and even flourish. And I think this work can and should begin now. So Bendell talks particularly in terms of 3 R's, 3 words beginning with R. These are relinquishment, resilience, and restoration. In his analysis, relinquishment involves letting go of practices that are harmful to the world and its ecosystem. We're all familiar with the ways in which we're encouraged to do that. Flying less, eating less meat, though that may not be an issue for most of us here. Consuming less, wasting less. In a society or in a scenario involving societal collapse, much of that will be forced upon us anyway. But I think we can go further. Our distinctive contribution as Buddhists is to exemplify a different level of relinquishment. Particularly, what views, attitudes, and behaviours can we let go of to help create as positive a society as possible in the future? So that's relinquishment. We could also think of it as renunciation, which is a more familiar term. And then we come to resilience. So he doesn't mean resilience is about preparing for survival in some bunker somewhere. It doesn't mean arming yourself and your community to the teeth in a brutal fight for survival. What I think Bandel is saying is that resilience refers to the values we need to uphold and sustain a stable social structure. And that a structure which is in a manner consistent with human dignity. So resilience is about values. As a Buddhist, I think those values must be dharmic ones. Values that conduce to ensuring the possibility of spiritual growth. Values that offer access to meaning and the source of true happiness. So, resilience, values. And then there's restoration. Restoration is about acknowledging how dependent we are on the natural world. It's about moving away from ideas of separateness and mastery. It's about restoring full awareness of our place in the web of life, of natural conditions. It involves challenging the distorted idea that we can somehow continue to live and prosper in a way that actively undermines our own life support system. So we have 3 questions, and those questions I'm going to put to you to talk about in breakout rooms in a minute. And I'll put them in the chat if I can put them in the chat. So the first is, what attitudes, views, and behaviours can we let go of to help create as positive a society as possible in the future? The second, what values should we uphold to ensure that a future society has access to spiritual growth, true meaning, and the source of true happiness? And the third, what can we do to restore our relationship with the natural world that we have lost, which has led to the climate and ecological crisis we're confronted with today. So before I ask you to go into groups, I'm just going to share with you 3 examples based on my own reflections. So an example of attitude I think we need to relinquish is a sense of entitlement. So we tend to take things for granted, like a regular supply of food, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the continued existence of democracy. Entitlement is inherently selfish. It puts me at the center of the universe. It's also inherently ignorant, because it ignores the principle of praticca samutpada, or conditioned co-production, the law that states that all things arise based on conditions. So in an increasingly precarious world, this is something that I think will help us deal more realistically and less selfishly with the shocks the future is going to bring. So relinquishing a sense of entitlement. And this is related to my second point, which is actually the third of the 3 questions, which concerns restoring our relationship with the natural world. So what springs to mind for me here is an attitude rather than an action, the attitude of gratitude. If we feel entitled, we will see no need to be grateful. I remember as a boy going to church, celebrating harvest festivals, so celebrating the produce that was brought in from the fields. It was in symbolic form by the time I was alive, tinned goods and so forth, but there was a good point behind that. I remember saying grace before meals, a simple act of saying thank you, of gratitude for what we are about to receive. May the Lord make us truly thankful. I think we could do worse than recalling virtues from an earlier, pre-globalized age. When things were less certain and people realized how much they were at the mercy of natural forces. Let us be grateful for the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. And let us share that spirit of gratitude with others. So coming to the third point about resilience and values. One of the values I think is vital to maintain is culture. So culture is I think, a distinctively human need and can connect us with higher spiritual values. So for instance, I sing in a choir, and after a good rehearsal or concert, I will often be amazed at and inspired by the beauty that our species is capable of achieving. I think this will remain the case, whatever social state we find ourselves living in. A society no matter how different from our current one, in which culture flourishes, will be a society with access to spiritual dimensions, in which the Dharma can ultimately continue to be available. So those are my three examples. Relinquishing a sense of entitlement, practicing gratitude in respect of the natural world, and upholding the value of culture. So I'm going to invite you to go into groups of 4 to consider these questions. Now, in the light of the time we have available, I'm aware that that is quite a lot to consider, so I might just suggest that you look at one of them and see how you get on. If you have time for more than one, then so much the better, but I'd rather have a good deep look at maybe just one question and see what you come up with, rather than rushing and trying to compress too much into the time. So I'm going to suggest we do that for 15 minutes, and we'll come together and share what it is that that we have come up with. So David will work his tech magic, please, and put us into breakout rooms. Okay, so I think we're all back. Welcome back. So we have very limited time. So I guess it would be, the sensible thing would be to say for one person from each group, just to maybe, if you're that well organized, to say a little bit, if you wish, about what you talked about, to share with the group. Completely up to you if you want to share. Anyone, if you want to put your hand up or just unmute yourself.
Can I just ask Helen? Helen, are you willing to do that for our group? Helen?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Was that an invitation to start? You're on mute. I know you're not.
Did you start? I can start. Yeah, I can say something. We started with the first one and talked a bit about entitlement and blame, in particular. You know, and polarity, the tendency to polarize and blame.
Cool. So you were moving beyond. I mean, moving beyond blame. Yes, but that would be that's a really interesting one. That hadn't occurred to me. There's no point in trying to start again when you're still wrapped with recrimination and whose fault is it and who can we blame? Yeah. Thank you. You just did that one, did you? That's the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked about that and a bit about entitlement. Yeah. In relation to the first question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We had a little bash at the class system of the UK. Class entitlement.
Right. Okay. Yes. That's a whole other conversation that I'm sure we could do for hours, but possibly not now. Okay. Anyone else?
I see Buddhist got his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Kasharaja. Yeah, we discussed the third question. You know, what can we do to restore our relationship with the natural world? And we talked about a recollection of the Buddhist teachings, really. And I think we all mentioned paying closer attention with mindfulness and compassion, and also a realization of interconnectedness. So all those things, I think we kind of touched on, like individually, and yeah, it's quite interesting, really.
And how would you go about that realization of interconnectedness, just out of interest?
Well, I think you've got to practice. You've just got to practice. And in my case, you know, it's interesting. Sarah has taught yesterday, and different ways to kind of have an impact But I think in my case, I would be creative. And the fourth one that you mentioned, you know, changing society by, you know, individually, you know, obviously we've got our own strengths and you know, we've got our own strengths. So yeah, so those are mine, just drawing awareness to it through sits in the centre of Manchester, meditation sits. And well, that's the one that springs to mind, really. Yeah.
So that was to do with interconnectedness?
Well, yeah, I suppose all of those things, really, because we would encourage people to look closely by including them, by inviting them to study the teachings with us.
Okay.
Hopefully they would then get to that, because yeah, it's just so important.
Okay, so we're way in through the sort of conceptual framework of the Dharma, and teaching the Dharma, of course. Yes, not to be forgotten. Thank you. Good. So Nancy, you from the US, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so yeah, our group was all over the place. I think we thought that the 3 R's had a lot of overlap with Dharma practice. So we relinquish greed, ill will, and delusion. We really ask ourselves, why not me? Why shouldn't I be a victim of starvation or wars from resource limitations? You know, recognizing the value of gratitude, but still, we want to have, these are things that we need to do on an individual level and a society level. So what do you do when your fellow Buddhists are talking about, oh, I'm going to fly here, there, and everywhere? There's work to do there. And I guess I'll just add my bodhisattva vow is to, let's see, I wrote this down. May I be a hospice nurse to myself and others, and to figure out how to be that.
I mean, the thing about, you know, trying to sort of get your fellow Buddhists, as it were, to do what we all think and know we feel them know that they should do. I suppose you have to, you know, it's avoiding blame, isn't it? It's about sort of trying to kind of understand why they do what they do and get into their shoes and just sort of try and tease out what you know, where are their values in this? What do they find, you know, what is their response? It occurs to me. Yeah, because obviously nothing will be gained by just having a go at them. Thank you for sharing that. Julia, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just struck by something Nancy just said, and it had come up earlier. And it's this thing about, why shouldn't I suffer from, not enough food or all those negative things, in brackets, negative, sorry, what's the word, speech marks. I haven't, this thought isn't fully thought through, but I just want to throw into the pot this idea of beliefs. So, and that our thoughts shape our world. So if we're thinking, well, why not me? Then is that not a little bit like saying, bring it on then, I'm going to starve? And I know that's not really what we're saying, but I just want to put that in the pot because I'm just working at the moment myself with, you know, beliefs and how to change patterns of behavior, how to invite the right things that I need through gratitude, putting out to the universe and all that stuff. So if I'm saying, well, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself as one of the people that's going to be starving or, you know, lose my house or something. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. So I haven't come to an answer. It's just a question, really.
Indeed. I don't think personally that being open to the possibility that be realizing that we are not entitled is necessarily the same as giving in to the inevitability of you know, things going really badly. But I think it's a healthy readjustment of our kind of idea of ourselves as being at the center of everything. That's all I guess I would say to that. Yeah. Amara Singer, hello.
Hi. Yeah, we were talking about well, this entitlement thing, and that maybe we could change that, and instead of feel that I am entitled to stuff, I feel that I am entitled to be connected with life and to have a healthy environment, if that is helpful. We also talk about what you said about gratitude, and think that it was very helpful, but also that receptivity is important, and being able to listen and really listen to other human beings, to listen other animals, including also other plants and the environment, and listen what they are saying to us. And then we passed to the third question and talked about how yes, we have to listen also, but we have to be like critical about what we are listening in terms of, for example, advertising or propaganda from industries or the government. Like, yeah, we shouldn't just close ourselves to that. We also have to listen, but we have to be critical about the messages that we are getting.
Yeah, it's, you know, we're not sort of inviting ourselves to sort of to go all passive and accept everything. You know, sometimes, you know, listening and positive mental states do also, they require a robust response to the ills of the world. Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts we've got? Oh yes, Ethan. Or you got your clapping, or have you got your hand up?
That's hand up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Nancy's already fed back from the group that I was in, but
yeah,
I was just going to say that I found the questions really confronting in quite a challenging way. Not in a negative way, but there's something quite direct about the questions, which I think is really powerful. I think it's really powerful to actually think, in the event of societal breakdown, what actually are the things that we need to let go of? What are the things that we need to actually and want to maintain? I think that's a really strong question, or set of questions to ask. Yeah.
Nothing is not direct. I think, in a way, I mean, obviously there's an invitation to continue to think about these things, because these will run and run. It's not as if we're going to get them done and dusted in 10 minutes.
No.
But, you know, in a way, it's like we can usher in, we can start now on this kind of stuff. You know, I mean, these are all fundamental Buddhist virtues anyway, I suggest. We can sort of start now with sort of, you know, ushering in some kind of new, you know, ushering in a better future, or let's, you know, operate on the basis that we can usher in a new future. But that they are challenging, and, you know, the very idea of thinking about the collapse of our civilization is challenging. And I know that I operate a kind of double think, and after this is over, you know, I'll probably put the telly on and maybe look at the sports pages and go back into a sort of familiar, comforting kind of not quite looking at it mode. So, you know, but it is good and sort of powerful to look at these things. Yeah, Chrissy, hello, Chrissy.
Hello, Kasharaj. I'm sorry that my camera is not working.
That's okay.
I appreciated what you said about in the past, from your Christian tradition, where you said grace before meals, and it reminded me of a grace that I had written down a long time ago from a friend, and I think it might be Rudolf Steiner. And I just remember a little fragment, and it's, "Dear Earth, dear Sun, by you we live, our loving thanks to you we give." So I just thought I'd mention that. And then another little bit, which was to do with a small bee. And it was about paying, looking at the small details of small life, and bringing a little tiny bee back to life with a spoon of honey earlier on this afternoon. And I thought it was dead, but my husband said, no, it's alive. And so even when things we believe are dead, that it is possible that they'll still come back to life with the right care.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you. And we can act in small ways, but that are significant.
Yeah.
To alleviate suffering, to regenerate life. That's a lovely thought. It's a lovely way to. I think we're going to have to conclude at that point. That's a nice little story to end on. So thank you for that, Chrissy. Thanks for everyone else for being here and contributing and thinking about these questions, and may you continue to think about them, because they're not going to go away. But we've run a little bit over time, so I'll just quickly hand back to Angela.